When you're new to VR or you've already been racing in VR for some time, these are 26 things every VR racer should know. I've spent over 2,500 hours in VR, and there's so much stuff about VR you simply cannot know in the beginning. If you don't know these things, you could lose performance, waste money, buy the wrong hardware, or just get disappointed with VR itself. Even with a 5090, you make compromises. So these are 26 VR tips I wish I knew when I got started. Let's get into it. Imagine not that long ago that you could only pick up like 2 headsets for like 500-600 euros. You had the Quest 2 and the HP Reverb, and if you wanted to do another headset, then you would immediately exceed thousands of euros. Currently, there's a lot more choice. Despite having all these choices with these different headsets, true innovation isn't really happening. It is more a case of let's make bigger GPUs, then add resolution, then make bigger GPUs, add resolution, and then at some point they say, hey, maybe we can use a different type of lens, and then we're gonna have other compromises and other compromises. So all the choices in headsets you can have are either giving you field of view, they're gonna give you good blacks, they're gonna give you a sharp picture, but they're not gonna give you everything. There's just more choice, more nuance. But they're all compromises. Also, when you're seeing new brands, new headsets, new marketing, trust me, these aren't innovative headsets. These are just like different sauces, you know? It's still sauce, all right? One thing is disappearing from VR, and that's screen door effect. So that's like actually looking to square shields or whatever with super low resolution. I think that time has passed. I've seen lots of disappointment with pre-orders. When you see a new video about, hey man, we're gonna build a new headset, be calm, be patient. These companies, they want to sell you these headsets for sure, and they're gonna be in stock. Just be patient instead of like waiting for whatever, how long. I've seen pre-orders, I heard stories about pre-orders taking a massive amount of time. I would just be calm, be patient. This is the one question I get the most, which is impossible to answer, but let's go, let's do it anyways. I have GPU and I have CPU. Can I run VR? I'd say go for a 7800 X3D CPU and go for a 3080 GPU or higher. And I recommend NVIDIA cards, they work better in VR. VR experience comes with a decent headset. If you have a 8K OLED, for instance, I think you are set for the future. But then it's all about upgrading the following. Upgrade your GPU. I can already tell you, when NVIDIA comes with their 6090 cards, I'll get them. I will just do that in a heartbeat, because that will actually give me the sweet gains I'm searching for. And why do I say this? Well, when you have these types of graphics cards, the bare minimum, then you can run these lower resolution headsets. But then when you go higher, then all of these great resolution headsets, you simply cannot run them. You will never actually get the visuals dialed in. That's why I say you need that juicy GPU. Even the 50 ppd, I'm struggling with my 5090 on Le Mans Ultimate and iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione. By the way, this is a big question mark on the DreamR SA, but when I get this, I will make that review. And I have a guide in the description that will shortcut the whole explanations on how well at least the Pimax headsets are with the different systems, and like a spider chart. It really helps you to make a decision if you should get this one or this one, or then you could say that is so expensive. But let me talk about this thing. I don't care about upgrading wheels. I don't care about upgrading screens. I don't need button boxes. I don't need nothing. I just want a big good picture. So I'm only spending money on the system and on headsets. Well, I'm actually not spending on headsets because Pimax is sponsoring me, But note that it would be cheaper for me to actually work my job and buy headsets myself. That would have been cheaper. So I see this as like a gesture to the community to make these reviews as good as I can. So, and if you can appreciate that, check the links in the description. I created a free buyer guide, and if you do want to take the leap buying a VR headset from Pimax and you're using my codes, I'm forever in your debt, sir. When you're racing in VR, I think this wheel particularly works well because I have the buttons around this area. So I'm currently looking at the Moza Pro wheel. It has an utterly rotary button somewhere here, I believe. So 2 rotaries and buttons around this area is very good for muscle memory. These ones are actually not that good for VR because you kind of don't know which one you touch. Also very important, I think, are the these double ones, because again, it will be so easy in VR to memorize these different buttons. So you see this this thing, this is called open kneeboard, and you can take every window capture into your VR environment. And I can see my chat, I can see overlays, and I could even create a camera and display that view into my VR environment. This is an absolute massive app that I'm so grateful for. This particular piece of software, open kneeboard. Every VR user should use open kneeboard. Let's talk about tracking. So you got tracking systems with inside out cameras, and this one in particular is like, I put it on, I can race, you know? But you also have these ones. Lighthouses, lighthouse tracking. And it seems that lighthouse tracking is better for your system because the inside out tracking does take up some GPU and CPU. So lighthouse tracking is better, but you always have this time to set it up with lighthouses. So you have the headset, you need to set up the lighthouses, you need to turn them on. If you don't want to keep them running, there's no off switch. Oh my god, why? And there's gonna be super annoying noise in your room. So if you have a good hearing, like me, I'm like pretty getting insane from these lighthouses like spinning all the time. And for everyone who doesn't know what tracking is, it is basically a system that understands where the headset is in the environment, and it's really an important part of getting that real feel when you're sitting in the car. Setting up VR is a real pain. You become somewhat of a software engineer at some point because of all the things you need to look out for. However, these day and age, I think it got a lot easier. And especially with ChatGPT, if you can't figure it out, spit to ChatGPT some problem-solving solutions. And a lot of times I figure out my problems that I'm having. Do you have a weak stomach? Or do you get car or seasick? Then chances of you getting sick in VR might be increased. You know these people, right? They get car sick, they get seasick. It's an indication that you might get sick in VR as well. But I also know the other cases where people get they drink 3 beers, they throw up, they get car sick, but they have no sickness in VR. But yeah, if you get kind of nauseous quickly, then you could get nausea quickly from VR too. Also, it's important, are you a sweaty person? And I'm not in a way saying like sweaty, you're a sweaty racer, but like physically sweat. Because when you are really sweating, that humidity is gonna transfer over onto your lenses and you get foggy lenses. However, for me, I don't really get sweaty, so I don't have this problem. But one other thing is important. When this headset is on standby, it kind of produces some heat and it creates some sort of warmth on the headset itself. So for instance, if this room gets super cold and I put on a headset, I will have the foggy lens as well because the cold lenses condensate my body heat. These headsets are really like removing the heat from your face, so they're not really warm on your face. And I don't never get foggy lenses. But then again, if you're a super sweaty person, yeah, you could have like that humidity on the lenses as well. A lot of people have asked me, how long does it take to get used to VR that you can do it for multiple hours in a row? And I will admit, the first time when I did my races, there was like this on Assetto Corsa Competizione, on Low Fuel Motorsport, I did sprint races, and they were 45-minute races, and I was only able to do one 45-minute race or two 20-minute sprints. And then I would just be mentally fatigued, like, wow, such a like a mental exhaustion. But nowadays, 4 hours, easy. I have on my channel live streams, 4 hours non-stop. How long does that take then? Well, if you enjoy the experience itself and you do 1 or 2 races, then within a couple of months, it will be second nature to you. There were some comments on one of my videos about motion blur. They never tell you about the motion blur. So when you're looking at objects, think about it, how you operate in life. Let's say you sit in a real car. You're looking at the traffic lights, you're looking at the speedometer, you're looking at the road surface, you see him, I don't know, a cyclist approaching, and this is kind of how you shift focus in your vision. But if you do this, then in VR, then you're gonna have this headset blurring a little bit when you need to when the headset needs to retrack its position. So the image kind of suffers in quality a little bit. That's something that you just don't notice if you're just using your eyes naturally. But yeah, there's just something that the image quality drops when you're moving your head. But the way you look at things, that's for me, like somebody said it in the comment and I was like, yeah, that's the thing. I never see it. I don't bother with this. A lot of headsets, but as far as I know, every headset has this. Not gonna praise Pimax, it definitely isn't perfect, but it did that sharp image stabilized like mega quickly. So it's like I look at something, I move my head, I look at something, and there's no time for me to process that the image was blurry. Yeah, but some people might have like a ninth sense for this. And then I'm sorry for you, man. You will never be satisfied with VR. You see this kind of review videos, yeah? We always complain, it's never perfect, there's always something to bitch about. But I do think we are in an area with VR that, especially what I'm doing Le Mans Ultimate, like I know how it used to look in a Quest 2 with Assetto Corsa Competizione with a 3080, and I remembered where we pushed the image to the highest resolution and we got like 3 frames per hour, and then my system would completely freeze, but we would look at the picture, how nice it looked, like wow, now it looks nice. And that's kind of how it looks right now, but with 72 or 90 FPS. So it is a lot better now. There's a lot of juicy picture you can look at. So as of driving in VR, racing in VR as a experience, it's very easy to get lost in it. Like, you so easily forget that you sit in this room. So when you race in VR, you don't necessarily get a lot more information, but you're removing the information from your subconscious that you're in a room and you're actually on track. And I found that I can turn off the racing line, I can judge corners, and as soon as I go back to the screens, which I almost never do, I just lose out on the performance. I can't build setups, I can't really race, it makes no sense, and I have no fun on screens. In VR, everything is just sweet for me. Depth, immersion, the whole deal. If you want to do flight simming or sim racing, get a headset that was designed for this. Because if you have a headset that will be like for everything, it's gonna be kind of mediocre at everything, because it needs to please everything. And yeah, get like headsets that were designed. These Pimax headsets, they were designed for sim racing. I'm pretty sure. I like them a lot. So simulations to do VR, iRacing, Assetto Corsa Competizione, Le Mans Ultimate, I think is the best. You can do Race Room, Automobilista got great great stories about people enjoying Automobilista in VR. I'm probably skipping a few, but these are the ones on top of my mind. At the time of recording, I'm kind of waiting for Assetto Corsa Rally in VR. I'm also waiting for a massive optimization patch for Assetto Corsa Evo. I really want to play these titles in VR as well, but we're gonna have to wait. Also, Project Motor Racing set in the beginning of 2026 VR as well, but I kind of lost confidence in Project Motor Racing. Let's talk about 120 FPS with the crystal light. It looks really special, but I don't think it's required. I've seen people commenting like, yeah, if it's not 120 FPS, it's unacceptable. Well, maybe. There's a weird, like a really special depth to this. There's a real special depth to 120 FPS. Again, with a 5090 native resolution, crystal light, I get frame drops, stutters. There's such a... In VR, you need to understand, like if you do 72 FPS, you get a good moving environment. It's not slow, it's not stuttery, whatever. But you have so much more frame time that you can work with. So you don't, when you go 90, you immediately drop the frame time. When you go 120, you have such a little frame time. Your GPU needs to work so hard to push these frames into these small windows of time that it's just immensely heavy for systems. So, and then you just need to drop the resolution again, which doesn't look good. And I'm a kind of picture guy, you know? Somebody else could be like an FPS guy. But overall, FPS, when you're coming from screens, you don't need 700 FPS in VR. 72 is a good baseline, and it looks natural. You don't need gazillions FPSs. The shortest way to find perfect settings for your system and headset combo is basically by copying someone else. That's the absolute fastest way. There's so much smart people on the internet coming up with settings, have iterated a lot on, like I just copied these as well. The ones that I have on my Patreon, free Patreon, you can copy them as well in the description. These are stolen from somebody else. I don't really get into the different settings. There are numerous, endless possibilities on settings. One thing I will say about settings, test your settings in nighttime racing with lots of other cars, or try it with sunset or sunrise, because then you have so much more shadows, and shadows are like insane and very heavy for your system. So if you can get a steady frame rate in rainy conditions or with sunset, then you can pretty much assume it's gonna be good frame rates for all conditions. When you're in VR racing and you got your navigation in your real life, my buttons and my keyboard over here and my mouse over here, this just feels all natural to me. I can navigate everything. I can do streaming, I can do racing, I can change settings. I have, like, you will find a way to navigate your racing and the things you're doing while you're in VR. And again, Open Kneeboard will give you additional screens that you can work with, like chat overlays and all that beautiful stuff. I'll also warn you when you want to upgrade your headset in general. So for instance, if you upgrade your VR headset, you need to get used to a new ecosystem. And a lot of times we can kind of get stuck with our same familiar headset. I remember this very much when I was shifting from the HP Refurb to the Pimax Crystal Light. I really had to adjust to the Pimax ecosystem. I wasn't really liking it in the beginning. It was like unfamiliar, and that's also a thing that you when you pivot to a new headset, there's gonna be this like phase that you need to get used to stuff before you can actually feel the good enjoyment. Be careful with motion rigs. If you have a lot of motion in your rig, then you could have this motion blur thing intervening a lot. So I don't have any experience with motion, but it's something that comes up in the comments a lot of times. You can watch another 10 videos on how VR will be, but I suggest to have a look out on the secondhand market, pick up an old Quest 2 and see if it's actually something for you. But be warned, if you like this, then you can never go back to screens. There's people that can confirm this. And if you want to know more about VR and you want a video with more information, then I highly recommend this beginner guide. It covers a lot of information that we didn't cover in this video. Thanks for watching. There it is. Click it. VR beginner guide. It's a good video. 30K views or something. Let's go. See you there.